In this episode, we break down Hannah's own words from the witness stands in the moment her defense started to unravel. You're going to want to stay tuned until the end on this one because what you're about to hear might change how you see this entire case. It certainly did for us.
I'm John. I'm a 911 dispatcher. I've been active in the field for about nine years, somewhere around there. Joining me, as always, is your host, Drew Breezy, who was a police detective, a police lieutenant, a police sergeant, a police corporal, a police officer. He did all the polices. You have a question or a comment about Hannah Payne, you're definitely going to want to listen to this testimony, and you're probably going to come away with some questions. We'll do our best to answer those questions before you could even ask. That's why we wake up every morning. But make sure you're hitting like and subscribe and following and doing all those cool things.
We stumbled into something good with this case because it illustrates how important the 911 operator's words are and the instructions that follow, how important the police officer's words are when you're interrogating somebody and being truthful and being honest. And you as a citizen, how important it is for you to be forthcoming and everything else. So what we're going to do is watch Hannah Payne's testimony. We're going to stop and start probably and discuss in there. I think it would be fitting if we just kind of reviewed the 911 call first, maybe the second 911 call, if you have that.
Yeah, I do have that.
911, what's the location of your emergency?
Yes, ma'am. I'm on Clark Howell and Forest Parkway, the intersection. I actually called about 20 minutes ago for an accident, and no one has shown up yet. But I am under the impression that the guy that caused the accident, who ran the red light, is drunk, and he's gotten back in his car, and he's looking like he's trying to drive away.
Okay, can you get his tag number?
Hold on. He's driving away. It's a red Dodge Dakota. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Okay, so he is going west, down Clark Howell, down Forest Parkway.
Okay, so you couldn't get a tag number?
No, but I'm catching up to him right now.
Okay, ma'am, we actually do not want you to chase him. We just want you to be safe. And it's
I
not
understand.
to chase him.
I understand 100%. I'm just going to get the tag number, if nothing else. But I am going west down Forest Parkway. And we are almost up to him. I mean, his radiator is busted and everything. So I honestly have no idea how he's driving the truck the way that it is. Okay. It is a Georgia Tag. License plate is RHA as in Apple 4859.
Okay. So if you can go back to that location where the incident happened, it's because someone is actually on the way to you guys now.
Okay, well, there's a police officer there, but he is drunk. I'm sorry, but I'm here to tell you I'm not going to follow him because he is going to cause another accident. So I will stay behind him until an officer can get to us, but until then, I'm not moving.
Yeah, no, that's what I want. I want you guys to go back to the location where it happened, and an officer will be out there momentarily, okay? Ma'am. Ma'am.
Ma'am!
Yes.
Ma'am! He just pulled the trigger of my gun in my hand while he was...
Ma'am,
I need a police
you were not
officer
supposed to
now.
follow him.
He hit my car!
Okay, you got the tag number.
There's a police officer down the street. Tell them to come up here now. He pulled the trigger on my gun after he attacked me. Tell the police officers to turn around from the 285 entrance and come up here immediately. And now he needs paramedics. I'm safe, but he ain't. Can you say? You say what happened?
Okay, we could call it good there.
Yeah.
Basically, what happens is that a police officer comes, and then the 911 dispatcher says, "Okay, talk to him." So that's basically Hannah Payne's first testimony on the stand. It's like one of the biggest pieces of evidence used against her. We've broken down over the past several parts. When she insists on following. One thing we never talked about is when she's kind of got that sassy attitude. I'm fine, but he ain't. Drew. Do you have any thoughts on that before we get her on the witness stand?
I want to let Hannah Payne explain all of that.
Oh,
And I'm telling you, I'm not trying to sway you either way. I'm just presenting.
I'm ready to doubt, Drew.
I'm presenting what I see, and I don't necessarily agree with the outcome of this. I'll just say that. So what this case is like, it's almost like Pandora's box. Every time, it's like a Russian nesting doll. Every time we opened something, every time I found something else about this case, I found 2 more things that I want to talk about. Then I found 3 more things that I want to talk about. And at the beginning, I was like, man, this is the Karen. This is the vigilante. This is the road rage incident. And that's what everybody portrayed it as. Now I'm listening to the case, and I'm listening to the whole thing. And then I take it into totality of what the tone and tenor of that county is, just outside of Atlanta, what's happening there, what the prosecutor's trying to do with gun crimes there, agendas are being pushed. I think you're going to see that there's a little bit of a different story here. There's more to the story than what's actually being told. And this is why I keep saying words matter. Words most definitely matter in this case. And you're talking about a 21 or 22-year-old girl. So let's just get to this, John.
You say your full name for the record and spell it out for the course tonight.
It's Hannah, Hannah, Payne, Payne.
Have you lived in Dade County or Clayton County in close proximity? Have you lived there the majority of your life?
I have. I was born and raised in Clayton County and then moved to Fayette when I was 8.
What do you do for a living?
I'm in property management for apartment communities, and I've been in that industry now for going on 10 years.
Okay, and so you came straight out of high school into that.
I did.
And that kind of industry, what do you do for your job?
Typically, I'm in the field. I go from property to property, either collecting rent, sometimes walking vacant and or abandoned apartments that could potentially be under construction. And I would show vacant apartments to potential renters.
So you see what we're trying to do here as a defense. We're trying to set up why that she's a professional woman. She was just coming from work that day, that in her job, she does have some inherent dangers, so including property management. She's a 22-year-old girl. She carries the money for her apartment complex around with her sometimes. She has to go into what she thinks are vacant apartments that are under construction that may not be vacant. Who knows? She has to show potential clients. Realtors, there was a case here in Hillsborough County where realtors were being sexually battered. So realtors, apartment complex managers, that kind of thing, they definitely have some risk in their job. And he's just kind of trying to set up, this is probably why she had a gun in the first place.
So
Makes sense.
At times you were carrying basically tills for your company of large amount of money.
Correct, yes.
Okay. And you testified that on some occasions or more occasions, you have to show empty properties or empty locations to people that you don't know or that you're told to by your company?
Correct.
Okay.
Whether it be vacant apartments or vendors, either or.
And how do you feel about that?
I mean, it's a part of my job. In the beginning, we had smaller properties where I was the only person who was going from property to property. There were occasions that were unsettling, but it was still a part of my job. And the longer that I was with the company, the larger we got, the more properties we received. And the more, I guess it put me more out alone by myself, without additional site staff, without anybody with me.
So in my analysis, she's saying he's getting her to say, yeah, look, I mean, we're not talking about just one apartment complex where I'm walking around paranoid. We grew as a company and they've given me greater responsibility. So I'm all over the place and I'm not necessarily within help's reach. Is that feasible, John?
And they would know that you were going to these sites, correct?
Correct. Not exactly which ones. I would be kind of all over the place, depending on which ones I was going to.
And because you were going to all these different places to meet people you don't know, did you do anything for your safety?
I did.
And what was that?
I registered for a concealed carry permit, and when I received it, I purchased a firearm.
Did your company know about this?
They did, yes.
And were they in support of this?
Yes, they were.
And it was not unusual for other individuals with the same type of work to wear a gun or have a gun?
No, not at all.
Okay. And you said you purchased a gun. What kind of gun did you purchase?
It was a Springfield, and it was a XD because it was smaller, so I was able to keep it concealed.
Okay. And you got a valid permit, correct?
Correct.
What else did you do to help make sure that carrying a permit or carrying a gun on your side would be safe?
I would go to the shooting range, and at different shooting ranges, they offer kind of like a variety of options, including self-defense kind of classes or tutorials, rather.
And did you ever take one of those classes or tutorials?
I did. It was a while ago, so I wouldn't be able to tell you exactly, but it was a self-defense training course.
Okay. And in this training, what did you learn from what they were teaching?
Just how to properly store your weapon, how to properly remove your weapon, how to make sure that your safety when doing so doesn't cause accidental discharge. And they would explain how when you pull your weapon out, that the way you hold it is determined based on what you're ready to do. In other words, you keep your index finger on the slide until you're ready to pull the trigger. When you're ready to pull the trigger is when you put your finger into the trigger guard.
So this is pretty poignant stuff. I mean, she not only went through the motions of getting a concealed carry permit, she went through what she called a tutorial given by the gun range, and she's using firearm instruction terms. She's not saying, yeah, you put the clip in the thing and then you stuff it in your, she's talking about the weapon, the firearm, the gun, whatever. I mean, I think that this is good for the defense. Are you on mute, John?
No, I wasn't saying anything, but I would say that it changes the way that I think about her. I think if you go back and listen to that first episode, I characterized her as someone who was, I don't want to say gun nut, but there's a lot of people who feel
empowered.
The right to carry a firearm doesn't mean it means it doesn't come with any responsibility, and that they're going to tuck this thing behind their back and be ready to insert the gun into any situation. I think that that's a type of person, right? Someone that doesn't, like me, like I own a firearm, but I don't carry it because I don't have time to go down to the range. Apparently, Hannah Payne is at least going to some efforts to do that. So it changes the way that I think about her as sort of a trigger happy gun toting woman.
And did you commonly wear this weapon?
Every day.
Where'd you wear it?
On my person, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I had a holster that went inside of my pants, and I wore it on my front right hip.
Was that visible to individuals?
No.
You recall May 7th of 2019?
I do.
Prior to that day, have you ever had to draw your weapon or find yourself in a position where you would need to?
No.
Okay. So on this May 7th, of course, you've been hearing these stories. Could you tell us what happened on that day?
I can. I was on my way home from work, and I was coming up to an intersection where the light had just turned green. As I was getting ready to turn left, there was a semi that was turning right. Someone ran the red light, and I watched him run right into the tractor trailer.
Okay.
I pulled off to the side, and I got on the phone with 911 to give an account of what I had noticed. I had assumed that the truck driver or someone else that was involved had already called, and they hadn't.
If I could stop you right there. You said that you pulled off to the side. Whereabouts?
I pulled up onto the curb,
Okay.
right through the intersection.
And why did you do that?
I wanted to get out of the lane of travel.
Okay, so there was heavy traffic that day?
It was pretty steady.
Okay. And is that where you called the 911?
It is, yes.
Okay, and then what did you do?
After I got on the phone with 911, I was kind of explaining everything that I saw, and I started to walk over to the truck driver because I noticed that there was someone else who had witnessed it who pulled off to the side. So I walked over to the truck driver, and we kind of just were conversing, asking, I don't even know what happened, and he just was confirming that we did have a green light. So
I wanted to point out that I did edit all of this.
I noticed that someone else had walked over
Not to show any favoritism, but I edited for brevity.
to the other vehicle that was involved and was checking on them. After talking to Mr. Kimball for a while, he was on the phone with his dispatch
Mr. Kimball.
the entire time, and so I was kind of relaying everything that happened so that they were able to hear it from me and not just from him.
Relaying it to whom?
To his job.
Okay.
So his supervisor, I would assume.
All right.
After that, we were kind of just standing there waiting for the police to arrive, and the other gentleman who had witnessed it walked over to us, and he introduced himself and said that he was a state officer, and he flashed his badge and said that he had checked on the other gentleman and that was asking us, are we okay? Is everybody all right? And actually told me that he had saw where he ran the red light and confirmed it to Mr. Kimball as well.
Okay. Identified himself as a state officer?
Correct.
Okay. And you've heard a couple of times it being called a correctional officer or another name. Are you sure he identified himself as a state officer to you and to Mr. Kimball?
Correct. He told me that he was a state officer. I didn't find out that it was a correctional officer until months later when I found out from you.
But he did show a badge?
He did. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, he didn't pull it off. He just lifted his shirt and we saw the badge and then he continued.
And how was he speaking to you, or how?
Okay, important point, John, do you think?
I think so. Correctional officers don't have any real authority over the community. I mean, we're, it's case dependent on whether or not we could really do anything. But when she said flashing a badge at first, all of a sudden I became very concerned, because a correctional officer that actually has a badge that goes around showing it, that's typically not a good situation. If he's just trying to say like, hey, I'm Yeah, honestly, I'm not even sure where the correctional officer stuff comes to bear in the situation, but maybe he's trying to reassure them or show them that he's helpful or that he can act in some kind of professional capacity, that he knows what he's doing. I don't know. He made a good witness, and I think that he handled himself well. But I wonder what they're driving at in terms of how this would have affected Hannah if she believed a police officer was already on.
It's not like he pulled out a badge out of his wallet. He was wearing a badge on his pants, according to her. He lifted his shirt and we saw the badge. He didn't say, I work Department of Corrections. I guard Fort Charlie, or, he didn't say any of that. He said, I'm a state officer. And even if he was probation and parole, she's, the general, it's just like any member of the media in the Bay Area here. They generally don't know ranks or departments. A friend I had that was in the media once told me, yeah, we don't know what a major or a colonel or a captain or a corporal is. Like, we always just thought the detectives were the cool ones. So, here's this guy in plain clothes. He lifts his badge, and that goes to Hannah's frame of mind, in my opinion.
Was it demeanor to you and Mr. Kimball?
He was trying to make sure everyone was okay, making sure that we kind of stayed over here, and that anything that, we could remember that happened, we were kind of going over it with him. But he seemed to be comfortable with the situation and making sure that all of us felt comfortable, I guess is the best way to explain it.
Your voice on the 911 appeared to be kind of calm, and so that was the tone, or how you perceived everybody's tone as this was continuing on?
For the most part, I think that me and the truck driver were kind of more calm. The officer, the way that it was kind of like he was, I don't know any other term other than kind of hyped up. Like he wanted to make sure that he was in charge in a way.
What else did he?
He's a public servant, so he has the take charge attitude. He's used to dealing with emergencies. I'll go as far as to say if he were a member of the military, he would probably do the same thing. Just be a good citizen, be a good witness, try to take control in the sense that nobody should be hurt and everybody should just stay where they are until the police come. I don't think he's doing anything wrong by what he's doing. I don't think she's doing anything wrong in thinking what she's thinking either.
No, I agree.
State while you were sitting there waiting on the police to arrive?
Well, me and the truck driver were curious.
I also want to point out, from a body language and interviews and interrogation standpoint, of course, this is 4 years later from the incident, but she's not wavering one bit in this testimony. It's rare in 2024 that you have a defendant go on the stand as it is, and especially in a murder trial. And she's not the least bit nervous to tell this story. She is telling the truth. She's telling everything that she can. She already swore to tell the truth, and it's all under oath. And, the jury's going to be the judge of whether she's lying or not. But I say so far, so good. Go ahead, John.
Just a point of order, and this may seem obvious, but it bears saying, just with what you mentioned, but no one is compelled to take the stand in their own defense. That's the Fifth Amendment. If she's up there, it's because she has wanted to tell her story, and most good lawyers will tell them not to do that, because Hannah Payne will of course be cross-examined by the prosecution. So when a jury is given instruction on how to deliberate on a case, they're told you may not even consider the fact that they did not take the stand in their own defense as a mark against them. So when Hannah Payne is up here and she's calm and she's collected, and she's probably been working on the fortitude to handle this for a long time and has been eager to tell her story. And just the pacing and the control that she has over herself. At one point, the defense attorney says, "Can you tell us what happened that day?" She says, "I can." She seems really locked and loaded and ready to go. And I believe every word she's saying. But it's just like when she was in the interrogation room with the police officers, she believes that she's right. She believes that what she's doing is justifiable. She doesn't feel like she has to hide or do anything like that. She doesn't have any criminal intent. And that's why she's able to carry herself with this, no pun intended, Drew, but this is why she can carry herself with such personal convictions, because she believes what she did was right.
You're right. And this is why I say this may change your mind, because what she says at the scene and what she says in the interrogation room and what she says on the stand does not waver. It doesn't change one iota. There's a prosecutor, as you'll see probably in the next episode, that makes it look like she changed her story. She never changed her story. She didn't. She's telling you the truth, and she's leaving it up to the jury to decide whether there was bad intent or not.
Because we didn't know what had just happened. It seemed obvious that he ran the red light. So we were asking him if he was okay and if there was something going on. And he said, he's okay, but he said he's definitely inebriated.
Are you sure that's the word he used?
I'm positive, because it prompted both me and the truck driver to reply simultaneously saying, do you mean he's drunk?
Okay. The state officer said that, and it kind of sparked yours and Mr. Kimball's attention.
That's a technique that attorneys use. It's called looping. What he's doing when he's saying the state officer, the state officer, the state officer, every time he says that, it reminds the jury that in her frame of mind, she's dealing with a state officer. So it's a technique they use. And just to your point too, it struck me. There was a lot of time because of the pandemic and everything in between the offense and the testimony here. There's no doubt in my mind that this was rehearsed probably no less than 100 times, 200 times maybe. And there was probably a lot of money that went into studying jury. That's how Dr. Phil got his fame. He was a jury. He studied juries basically for high profile trials. So there's a lot of science in there as well. So saying the right thing or saying the wrong thing has probably been rehearsed, but I still maintain she didn't change on the stand from what she said. And she didn't have the benefit of rehearsal at the scene, and she didn't have the benefit of rehearsal in the interrogation.
What happened next?
Afterwards, we're still standing around probably another maybe 10 or 15 minutes now. Additional from the original 10 minutes or so. And me and Mr. Kimball are continuing to speak, and the state officer had walked back over because at this time the guy in the truck had got out of his vehicle.
Okay. And when he got out of his vehicle, did the state officer address him?
He did.
And what was said?
He was just asking him what was he doing. And where are you going? Just come out of traffic, because his truck was still in the lane. So there were still cars that were passing, and he was just basically trying to make sure you need to just come out the way and stay out of traffic. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but he kind of started walking around, and the officers started following him around the vehicle, and you could see him having conversations, but again, I couldn't hear what they were saying.
And when you said walking around where?
His truck.
And just in that proximity of just his truck?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, continue.
So after he was walking around for a little bit, he kind of started, he being the state officer, started to walk back over to us, and he was kind of just giving us this look like this guy is, there's something that's up. And before anybody could ask, or either of us could ask him what he meant, he walked back over to him. I was actually on the phone with my family when I was on my way home from work, which I hung up to call the police. So during this time is when I took that opportunity, and I kind of walked back to my vehicle, and I was on the phone. I called my family back to let them know what was going on.
And it was to let them know what's going on, or let them know that you were safe, or?
Correct.
Okay. And is that when you made this second call, the 911 call?
It is. I noticed from a distance that it was getting more tension, I guess. Couldn't hear the conversations, but I could see the hand movements and the gestures between the two of them. Again, I don't know what he was saying, but it was almost like he's trying to explain to him something, which is when I told them, I'm going to call you guys back. I'm going to call the police back because something else is going on.
So she was at her Jeep when all of this was happening. She was on the phone with her family at her Jeep. Go ahead.
What's very interesting to me is just, you said that this was rehearsed, and I have no doubt that it is. She is so careful at every step of the way. When she's talking about this third-party conversation that she can't overhear, she's addressing this up front. She's saying, I cannot hear them, but I'm looking at their gestures, I'm looking at their demeanor. And the reason for this is that prosecutor is writing at a furious pace saying, what am I going to take her down on? And you can impeach someone's credibility just by saying, oh, so you really didn't hear that conversation. You're talking about a conversation that you didn't even hear about. Those things may not have any substance in terms of what happened, but they can be used to make someone look like they're embellishing, or that they're not telling the whole truth or the complete truth, or that they're, shooting from the hip, again, no pun intended. And she's doing such a good job of saying, this is what I know, this is what I didn't know, and then she's putting in all the detail. I called home, just so that there can be no room in the mind of the jury about what is she putting in and what is she leaving out. And it leaves a very, very overall honest impression, and it doesn't give much room to the prosecution to give them grounds for attack later.
Every once in a while, John, when they're showing this testimony, you can see over the defense attorney's right shoulder, you can see one of the prosecutors in the case. And watch her eyes, because she's spending just as much time watching Hannah's reaction as she is watching the jury's reaction. She wants to know what the jury's thinking and whether that went over well or not.
He started walking towards his vehicle again, like the driver's side at that time.
And when you called 911 the second time, was it kind of the same man?
Like I didn't even know we were at this point but the prosecutor is physically facing the jury right now. She's looking at them directly.
You did the first time?
It was. I was just basically explaining to them what it looked like was about to take place. Assuming and hoping that they would say, okay, well, we actually have an officer. He's literally right there. Given the time frame, I would have assumed that someone would have been there by then.
I think this is a point I would have emphasized a little more as the defense. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but I called the police for help, and we weren't getting any help. And that's when things went wrong.
That would have been a great point to make. Like she took right action at the right time, and we still waited 20 minutes, and no one who had authority to involve themselves in the situation showed up. Oh, and I don't want to like make my own blood vessels explode with the whole defund where the police are they involved in bullshit because of all the extra phone calls going on. But yeah, I mean that would have been a great point to make. It's like we would love for the police to have solved this in the first 20 minutes. They could have taken this guy into custody. A police car rolling up 3, 4, 5, 7 minutes later that would have diffused this whole thing, but wouldn't you know it, they never came, not within the time span before he was allowed to leave the scene. Drew, go ahead.
Yeah, or get him help if he's, if he truly is diabetic.
Okay. How many accidents have you seen before this one?
I mean, passed on the road, a few. Witnessed firsthand, none.
And have you ever been in an accident yourself?
No.
So this is the first time you're encountering any kind of accident really firsthand or close by?
Yes.
Okay. And you get back on the phone with 911, and what occurs then?
I'm explaining to them what I thought that we had learned was that the driver who had caused the original accident was potentially drunk.
And that came from what the state officer said?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And as I'm explaining it to her, I notice that's when he completely gets in his truck. He starts trying to turn it on, and you can hear him like revving it to get it to turn on, which I think that all of us were shocked that it even turned on to begin with. And that's when he started to drive away.
And you said you were shocked. Why were you shocked that it started back up?
There was fluids everywhere. It was smoking. It was damaged.
Was there a major impact?
There was, yeah. I mean, the entire tractor trailer just shifted and rocked when he hit him.
And then,
all right, that's a great statement, in my opinion, that probably should have subtly stuck with the jury, but maybe didn't. But she's saying that the vehicle was so damaged that it was torn up. Okay, so she's painting this picture. She also painted the picture that he hit so hard that a semi-tractor trailer shifted back and forth before it finally settled and came to rest. Because later it's going to come to, why would you in God's green earth think that you need to chase this person? And when you couple that with what she said on the phone, forgive me, but I'm not letting this guy go anywhere else because I don't want him to hit anybody else.
She's already seen what he can do. Yeah.
She's seen the damage he can do, even though he's limited in the damage he can do because his truck has taken 10 damage.
She doesn't want to see that happen to a minivan full of kids.
Exactly. So I think it's a very subtle way of saying it, but maybe he should have used a sledgehammer to say that. But hindsight's 20/20. I get it. I mean, maybe that was intentional as well.
you are on the phone with 911, you see him jump into his vehicle, revving it up.
That was not me.
What happens then?
That was
I'm just basically
That was law and crime that breathed into the microphone, not us.
Just telling dispatch that that's what's happening. I am explaining to her. He just got in his car, and she asked me if I was able to get the tag number as he's pulling away.
Were you able to get the tag number?
At that point, I wasn't. No.
Important
Did it
for
appear
your mind.
anybody had gotten the tag number?
No.
And
They were just trying to get out of the middle of the road.
so people were trying to get out of the way. Was anybody screaming, get the tag number, or?
I mean, at the time, all I could see was the state officer and the truck driver the state officer was kind of grabbing the truck driver, kind of telling him, to get out of the way.
Where was this truck driver standing?
They were, so if this was the lane where they were turning and the truck was kind of partially turned, they were standing at the middle part of the intersection, which would have been middle part of the tractor trailer, which is kind of in front of Mr. Herring's vehicle.
Okay. Did it ever appear that any of them might have been in jeopardy of being hit when Mr. Herring was starting up his vehicle?
Initially, it's not the first thing that came to, I think, anybody's mind. But then once he started revving it and just kind of took off, then yeah. So I'm explaining to the dispatch what happened. And as he's pulling off, she's asking me, was I able to get the tag number? Realizing I wasn't able to, I was already at my vehicle. And I completely got in my vehicle and went to go pull off.
Okay.
And at that time, the truck driver and the state officer was still standing over in the street, and he started waving me over, like calling me towards him.
Okay. And when you got up close to him, what happened?
I asked him, did he go straight? And he said yes. And he's telling me, he said, go.
So at that time, you were under the impression that he's a state officer sending you to get the tag, and 911 knows that you're on the way to get the tag.
Correct.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
So she thinks she's dealing with a cop. The cop is telling her, go. She's saying to the cops, I'm following this guy trying to get his tag number. And their response is, can you get the tag number? In other words, they're not saying, did you get the tag number before you took off? They're asking her to get the
It's a solicitation. Yeah, I get it.
And it's we hear it one way because hindsight's 2020. We hear it now another way because hindsight is still 2020, but she's got a good point. The defense has a great point here.
And when I was in my vehicle, when he was waving me over, his motions it was almost like he was waving me on. So when he brought me up, when I got up to him is when he told me to go.
Okay. And he said go, or did he say something else, or?
No, he just said, good, go.
Okay. All right, so then now you're going in the direction they pointed you, and you're on the phone with 911. Was 911 saying anything?
No, she was not.
All right.
There was kind of silence from the time that she had initially asked me if I had got the tag. I was still kind of getting my bearings, and I just started repeating to her, telling her, okay, he's going down Clark Howell or Forest Parkway.
So you never heard them give a warning of not to chase, or?
No.
And having heard the tape, did you feel that you were talking over it, or you just didn't hear it, or?
No, I was explaining to her as we were going down the road. I'm explaining to her what's happening, and from how I remembered it, she asked me again, so were you able to get it? And I explained to her, not yet, but I am about to. And that's when she told me that she just wanted me to be safe. I told her that I understood, and that I wasn't chasing. I was just going to follow, just stay behind him, to stay with him until a police officer could get to us. So I was able to kind of accurately, basically just keep them in the loop, since they obviously weren't there yet.
This is slow-mo instant replay. That's exactly what this is. Because in real time, When you listen to what she's saying, you hear it one way. When you slow-mo watch what she's saying and why she's, you know what I'm saying? It is completely different. It's as if she were deputized by that 911 dispatcher to go get the tag, and she's just following directions. It's completely different. And I totally understand her frame of mind. I don't know. You know, the outcome obviously is a lot more than just this interaction right here. But if they're basing her intent on her inserting herself into this situation where she ended up having to pull a gun, I don't think that she intended to do any of this. I think that she was following direction. She was 2 feet into it, and they were perpetuating. She just didn't understand what their directions were. They weren't clear.
Just to differ with you, I think it's a little cheap to just say, well, you know, the dispatcher was telling me not to follow and I didn't hear that. I think that that's just a little bit too easy to just disregard if I'm a jury member, to say, oh, well, she was told not to do this, and this is the thing she didn't hear, of all the things she didn't hear. And now putting myself in Hannah Payne's shoes, and this is where a little bit of unique John character is going to come in. You know, I know better. Some off-duty cop or something is going to tell me to chase somebody. They're not going to do that. But even if they did, no, you do it. I'm not doing this. Like, I'm just not somebody who's ready to insert myself into situations, right? She saw this vehicle accident. She pulled over. She called 911. She's already probably doing slightly more than me, because if there's a fireball or something, I might call while I'm still leaving the scene. But I'm not going to get myself involved to the point where I'm following anyone, even for the purpose of getting a tag. And I'm not going to be taking directions from someone at the scene to be doing anything, because I know that for my own liability, the best thing that I can do is stay out of it. So I guess I have some differing feelings from how Hannah Payne handled herself, and her gumption, or whatever, her willingness to be involved, is something that frankly I would not share. And I'm someone who's even part of this apparatus as part of my daily life. So I just, I
Does
feel differently.
22-year-old John think the same way?
No, but another 40-year-old man might not think the same way. I'm just putting myself in her shoes, and just as if I'm a juror and I'm looking at this, I'm like, you know, I'm still questioning whether or not that was the right thing to do, because she can explain her own rationale and her own justification until she's blue in the face, but it doesn't convince me as a juror that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So your impression at that point is that you're just going to get the tag, and then hopefully that'll be it. You just report the tag.
Correct.
Okay. And did 911 ever come on and say, hey, we've already got the tag from somebody else?
No, she never did.
Okay. So as you're getting up close to get the tag, what happens then?
As I'm getting closer, I explained to her that I had the tag, and she basically tells me that this is the way that I interpreted it, was that she wanted both of us to go back to the original accident site because police should be there by now.
All right. Did she say something before that about you just returning, or the only thing you heard was that both of y'all needed to be?
Correct. She just told me she wanted me to be safe. I told her I felt like I was safe. And that's when I told her that I was going to stay with them until an officer could get to us. And she said that that's what she wanted me to do.
At any time, did you identify you had a gun or was carrying a gun?
I didn't.
Okay. So you're following the individual to get his tag, and you get it, and then your interpretation of what was said is that they wanted both of y'all to come back to the scene.
Correct.
So what did you do at that point?
At that point is when we had both come up to the intersection, and I saw him stopped in the turning lane. So I turned as well, and when I stopped, I was under the impression, with me having 911 on the phone, that I could just be kind of like a messenger. So I took my phone on speaker and I took it to him to show him that I had the police on the phone, and I'm telling him they want us to go back to the original accident site.
All right, at this point, y'all have not made contact, correct?
No, we have not.
So how far do you think you pulled over the distance between you and his truck?
Well, he was in the turning lane, and I was in what would be considered like the right straight lane. And the distance between the vehicles were probably, maybe the width of this table.
But there was no contact, correct?
No, there was not.
Okay. And did you have any fear that something was going to happen by walking up to him with the phone?
I didn't think I had anything to fear. I assumed that having authorities on the phone, explaining that to him, that would just mean, okay, we'll go back.
Because you had not heard what the interchange between him and the state officer, correct?
I had not, no.
Okay. And as you approached him with the phone, how did you have it in your hand?
I had it on speaker, and I was kind of holding it like in my palm with it kind of resting in my hand, just like facing him so that he could see it says 911.
So now your intent is to walk up with the phone, tell him, hey, the police are on the phone. What happened then?
I was walking up to him, and I am explaining that I'm on the phone with the police and that they wanted us to go back to the original accident site. It's loud. We're near an interstate. It's a busy road, and I can't hear what he's saying to me. But as I got closer, I heard him asking me, "Who the F are you?" And I told him that I was nobody, but that I had the police on the phone. And that they wanted us to go back to the original accident site. Apparently I was close enough for him to reach out the car, and he knocked my phone out of my hand, and he grabbed me by my wrist, and he pulled me into the vehicle.
All right, this is stark contrast from jumping out of her Jeep, yelling, "Get the fuck out of your car, get the fuck out of your car," with her gun in her hand. That's not what happened.
Yeah.
She approached him with her phone in her hand and said, "I'm on the," and he even said, I think that's even on the 911 call. "Who are you?"
Yeah.
"I'm nobody, but I got the police on the phone." And she's showing him 911, and all of a sudden he knocks the phone out of her hand and pulls her into the vehicle. So did she initiate that, is my question.
I will, just to continue to differ with you in some ways, as if I'm a juror listening to this, I would say, well, you can't have it both ways. You can't imbue this state officer at the scene with some kind of authority to direct people to leave the scene, to be in control of the accident scene. Someone has left, the state officer's not doing that, and then you think that you're going to walk up with your phone and it says 911 on it, and all of a sudden you're carrying the power of the authorities of the police on the phone. And
Not
what I
necessarily.
but first of all, you're not talking to the police, you're talking to 911. And Drew,
You're
I
talking
almost,
to the police, though.
you are and you are and you are. She believes she's talking to the police, but
Yeah.
we, just for the sake of the audience, Drew, a 911 dispatcher is not a sworn law enforcement officer, and we can't tell anyone to do anything.
Right, but what would be the point of calling 911?
Yes, I understand that, but what I'm driving at, Drew, is that I almost think that this is something that's worthy of a research paper, because how often have we taken 911 calls from arguments in progress, domestics in progress, and the sole reason for someone to be dialing 911 is so that they imbue themselves with the power of 911 or the power of the police. It becomes a de facto badge. Look, I've got this. You know, the idea that she's going to leave the scene where a state officer is, that she's going to approach this vehicle with a phone that says 911 on it, and that she's got some sort of authority that she's getting from a 911 dispatcher through the phone and transferring it in order so that she can approach this guy and tell him that we need to return to the scene when this guy has already fled the scene where a state officer was. To me, as a juror, I don't buy that whole power dynamic that she thinks she has the ability, or that she's being solicited by 911 or empowered that she's being deputized in any sense. I don't believe that as a juror, that because she's on the phone with 911, now she has the authority to act as an agent to go and talk to this guy and convince him to come back, particularly when he's already left the scene where someone with arguably more authority than her, failed to act. Go ahead, Drew.
I'm looking at it from a different perspective, from the common person's perspective. And she's not imbuing authority. She's not saying I have the authority. She's saying I shouldn't have to feel any threat because I have 911 on the phone. And you're missing a very crucial point, which is when she says, and they want us to go back. She's not saying I demand you to go back to the scene. I have 911 on the phone. Look, here's my fake badge or whatever. I'm looking at it from the citizen standpoint. You have a Hannah Payne, a citizen who witnessed a car crash, who stuck around to be a witness in the car crash, then learns that there's an intoxicated driver, suspected intoxicated driver involved in the car crash. The intoxicated driver takes off. The state officer there's haze of what happened there, but she takes off after him. 911 saying, can you get the tag? She's trying to catch up to get the tag, but they're saying, no, we don't want you to get the tag. We're just asking if you get the tag, but that's not what they said. She gets up in front of him and she goes to where he is in his car and says, get out of the car. Let's go. Like, don't drive anywhere else. They want us to go back to the scene. I don't think that she's trying to use any kind of authority other than she's stopping a potentially drunk driver, which is what we tell kids in school to do. It's like she's trying to be a witness to a crash. She's trying to be a witness to a drunk driver. She's trying to do everything she can in her power to not get him to drive until the cops get there. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
What we're trying to parse out too is a generalization, Drew, because on the phone, the 911 dispatcher, she says, well, what we would want you to do is have both of you go back to the scene. The 911 dispatcher speaking in broad generalities, but I don't believe that the 911 dispatcher is saying, go tell this person that they need to go back to the scene, or go apprehend this person, or go confront this person, or go talk to this person.
I would 100% agree with you, but that's not what she said. And you have a defendant on trial for murder. You have to go with what she was told. You can't go with, well, this is what she was thinking.
I know. I'm breaking it down in terms of what I'm speaking from lots of different parts here, Drew. So I'm speaking in terms of the 911 dispatcher. When the dispatcher says what we would have you all do is return to the scene. That's the 911 dispatcher speaking in an ideal term. That's what would be best.
Yeah.
But she's not telling him to do that. So that's what the 911 dispatcher would do. Yes, Hannah Payne is taking it her own way, and I can hardly argue with Hannah Payne's own interpretation of those events. Now, if I'm a juror and I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about how she thinks that she's being asked by a state officer to pursue or chase or follow, and that she's being directed by a 911 dispatcher to go and confront this person, all I can think of as a juror, as myself, like if we're going to have Hannah Payne's subjective experience and we're going to have Jonathan's subjective experience sitting in the juror box, I'm frustrated. It's like, why aren't you minding your own business? You already did your due diligence of calling this in. And and Drew, I don't know. I just don't agree with the whole like approaching someone and trying to get them to stop them from drunk driving, because look how it turned out.
Okay, well, then let me ask you this: why isn't the state officer on trial? How come he intervened just the exact same way? Why aren't the three witnesses that testified to what Hannah Payne's actions were at the scene? Why aren't they on trial?
Because the charges are murder. None of those people were involved.
They didn't need to interject themselves into that. They didn't know the guy was going to die. They didn't know what happened before, and they didn't know what happened after. But they became very poignant witnesses because they stuck around and they were called to be witnesses in the scene. She's doing what a good citizen would do. She's preventing a drunk driver. I don't know how else to put it. Like she probably thought she was walking in the shallow end of a pool, and she found out very quickly that it was a lot deeper than she thought it was. I'll give you that. I'm saying her intent is not to be, if her intent was to shoot somebody or murder somebody or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not saying she has that intent. I never believed that she had that intent. Your pool analogy of her suddenly being in over her head is a great analogy, because when the phone gets knocked out of her hand and she gets grabbed and pulled to the car, for me, we talked about this in the prior episode or 2 episodes ago, but like for me, that's when a chain of a whole new incident begins. Right. And I know that as a jury and as a case, we've got to examine the whole thing. Did you think it was okay to follow? You're just getting your tag. Did you listen to this? Did you hear this caution? Did you think about this? Was this the right thing to do? But in a sense, just to draw the line between the two things. Okay, so let's have it play out differently, just to draw the line of what I'm talking about. She walks up and she says, the 911 dispatcher, the police say, we need to return to the scene. If this guy just says, no, I ain't doing shit, and then he just rolls up his window, then, and she returns to her car, no big deal. So I put a lot on the driver of the Dakota, the fact that he reached out and assaulted her. That's when everything radically changes, and that's when things stop being Hannah Payne's fault. So I get that. This whole, I'm not going for the whole, she needs to go and confront this guy, or that she's being directed to do that. And you call it good citizenry. I guess I'm a bad citizen, Joe. I don't know what to tell you, but I wouldn't necessarily be doing what she's doing.
I'm not saying they encouraged her to go confront anybody. I think what she's doing, though, is trying to prevent a drunk driver from driving. That's what I'm saying.
She has good intentions. I get that.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything wrong with it.
But it's not necessarily the smartest thing to do either.
No. And maybe her execution was bad, but and no pun intended there either. But I mean, like, if she had just pulled in front of him and stayed there in her car and turned on her flashers and said, okay, well, I'm in front of him. And then the outcome would have been different. And he either would have got help or he would have been charged with DUI. It just so happens that she got out of the car and he slapped the phone out of her hand. Like, who are you? And then they have painted her as the aggressor in this whole thing. When in actuality, what was she doing wrong other than getting out of her car, which was a bad judgment?
She's maybe doing bad judgments, or maybe even you could go so far as to call them stupid, but she wasn't doing anything immoral and she wasn't doing anything illegal. And then he reached out, and then when he grabbed her wrist, that's where I guess they would call that battery where you are. We would call that assault or assaulted battery or something. Now we're talking about a crime against a person where Hannah Payne is the victim. I understand that.
Now, you said apparently you got too close to the vehicle. Did it appear to you were too close to the vehicle, or?
I wasn't thinking that I needed adequate space to stay away from him or anybody or anything.
Okay. And then you said he knocked the phone out of your hand.
Yes.
And then he grabbed you. You said one was on your wrist. And where's the other hand?
And originally he had just grabbed my wrist. And he had pulled me in the car, and at some point my shirt had gotten grabbed.
Okay.
And he...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
He was pulling my wrist, and he pulled me in the vehicle, and he kept yelling at me, telling me, I have something for you. And he used... I have something for you, bitch. And he's leaning, and he's reaching, and he's pulling. And at this point, I remember that I'm sorry.
Take your time.
I remember that he had let go of my wrist, and he grabbed me by the back of my neck. And it was as if he was trying to kind of keep a hold of me. The entire time I'm telling him, I'm thinking, I still have to be on the phone with the police. They have to know. I'm telling him to let me go. And that's when he hits the gas and we go forward. I'm still in the car at this point. And while it only may have been a few steps or a few feet, when you are being held against your will and you have no idea what's ahead of you and you're looking down, it felt like it lasted forever.
All right, just a couple important points. I don't think I included it in this, and we probably got to wrap up anyway, but there are photos that back up everything that she says as far as the marks on the back of her neck, the marks on her hand, the marks on her face. She has black eye. Her shirt is torn. I know I included that, so you'll see that next week. Everything that she's saying is accurate. So she's saying that he slapped the phone out of her hand. I got something for you, bitch, or whatever. He grabs her by the back of the neck. He had let go of her hand at that point, but grabbed her by the back of the neck and was pulling her in the car. She's saying that he hit the gas, and though it only went a couple feet, this is where the argument can come in, like, oh, come on, it only went a couple feet and it bounced into your Jeep. But she's being drugged by this. And there are police officer stories where they have shot and killed people for less. And it's important to note in this phase of the confrontation, John, that gun is still on her hip. He doesn't even know she has a gun. That's why I'm saying I have a whole different perspective on this case. When you listen to everything that happened, I understand that her being in over her head is what got us to this point, but I don't know that her actions were untoward. I mean, she's being drugged in a vehicle by who she thinks is a drunk driver who, called her a bitch and is significantly older than her and said he had something for her and was reaching behind him and had already injured her and then was trying to drag her into a car. Something's not right. And, this is kind of where I'm like, I don't know, dude. I really want to take a look at this.
It seems like this episode, you and I have, I don't want to say argued. We argued. We argued about her stepping up to the line, whether that was smart or good or bad or whatever. Is she a good citizen? Is she an idiot? The point is that she stepped up to the line, and you could step up to the line. But then it was the suspect, the driver of the vehicle, that definitely crossed it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, John. I'm glad you said that. Like, so does he have a line? Go ahead.
Yeah, he has a line where he shouldn't be touching a woman, even if he's not intoxicated and is a wonderful human being, and which is how I'm sure he was always painted throughout. If this crazy lady is following you as you are trying to just peaceably flee the scene of a crime, roll up your window. Don't engage with her, don't touch her, don't do these things, don't call her a bitch. And her testimony is very compelling of the moment where everything changed. The phone is knocked out of her hand, so she's feeling helpless or disconnected from what has made her feel very assured thus far, and the assault begins. And being assaulted, means you have a right to defend yourself. She's already seen this vehicle slam into a tractor trailer. He's unrepentant about it. He's drunk about it. He's belligerent and assaultive, and the weapon's not drawn. So yes, the situation as it's being played out is completely different than what you might have expected in the first episode, where she's playing vigilante. This is not how Batman would do it. She's not even playing the part as Batman. And she's getting her ass kicked by this guy in the car. I guess we can argue about everything that happened in the phone call and in the following, but I think the whole situation turns on a dime and a hard pivot there when all of a sudden he reaches out and puts his hand on her. And in a sense, I, as a juror, now hearing this, I don't care about any of this stuff foregoing, because however she got there, I know that it plays in terms of intent and mentality, it matters. But the point is, she's there. She has the right to not be grabbed by the wrist, no matter what. And then he's the one that made that decision. He's the one that hit the gas after slapping her phone out, and she's getting battered or whatever. To me, all the foregoing before that he grabbed the wrist doesn't matter. Go ahead, Drew.
I guess just final word on this is that we have the prosecution's cross-examination, which I think is going to shed even more light for you. But I get down to this. If she had bad intentions anywhere, why would she want 911 to hear what she was doing? Why would she be on the phone with 911? Of all people, she could be on the phone with her brother, with her mom, she could be on the phone with McDonald's. Who knows? She was on the phone with 911. And if she had ill intentions in any of this, she wouldn't have called the cops to record everything that she was saying. I think that this was a little bit prosecution heavy. I've maintained since minute one, yes, there definitely needs to be some accountability. But this was not a haphazard, I'm just a dumb 19-year-old girl and I got a gun and I'm going to show it and I'm going to, spin it around and hee. It wasn't like that at all. She was a responsible gun owner. She has a Second Amendment right to carry a gun. She had gone through classes. She was of age, according to Georgia state law, to carry that gun. She applied for a concealed carry permit, and it never came out. It never came out until the last second, till the dire need for it to defend her. There's still argument of whether it needed to come out to defend her or not, but that's for the next episode. So that's just a little bit of a teaser of what we got from the next. If this episode made you think differently about the case, if you caught something others missed, if you caught something that we missed, please drop your take in the comments. And I personally would love it if you subscribe to the channel. If you're ready for the next part of the story, though, what the transcripts actually reveal and what they actually hide, you're going to want to click to keep going. This is the Comm Center. We tell the stories that others can't.